Well, first I'd like to start with saying thank you for coming to a talk this late in the day. I know usually about this time people have gotten a little tired or a food coma. They don't want to be in a talk. We seem to have enough space in this room, but if you're in room 20 and you're standing, there's more room in here, and we also have room 23, which is not on your badge.
They can ask questions in the Slack blue channel?
You can ask questions in the Slack blue channel, and you can ask at any time. You don't have to wait till the end. The proctor will let me know what the questions are, and I'll answer them at that time. So this talk is deliver what your client wants instead of what they ask for, and how to get them to ask for what they want. If you're in the tech industry, you've probably experienced where they don't usually mean the same thing. My name is Angel Thomas. I'm a co-founder and chapter leader for the Toledo chapter of Girl Develop It. I no longer live in Toledo. If anybody in here is from Toledo and is interested in getting involved in that, let me know because I need to pass that on to somebody else. I work for Center for Information Management in Ann Arbor as a software developer. I'm a wife, a mother, and an autism advocate. My youngest child has autism, so that's a really important part of my life too.
People are the problem. It's that simple. People are the problem.
So is everybody here familiar with Foamy? Because if you're not, you need to look up Foamy. He's got some really great skits out there. So has everybody seen this model? Okay. I think this is a great model because this is really what we do. The customer explains one thing, they want something entirely different. We build them for something grand. We didn't really build something grand. Oh, and help desk supported it. Very not grand. So normally I give out index cards, but since we're in different rooms, I didn't want to try to make it so that one room had an advantage. So what I'd like you to do is take out a piece of paper or write something down on your phone. I'm gonna play this video, and I would just like you to write a description. Okay, does anybody want to volunteer what they wrote? Epilepsy. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, that was Trans-Siberian Orchestra. What about the video? How would you describe the video? I can't hear anybody. Lasers. Okay, lasers, pixelated. You notice nobody said the same thing? Why not? Why are all the answers different? Because that's the key to why we struggle to communicate with our clients. And just so you know, I picked that video because my little girl who's autistic, she wants to be a violinist like Roddy Chong someday. So we see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it. That was a quote by Stephen R. Covey. He is the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective, Powerful People. So how do we get from this to this? I need a volunteer. Anybody willing to come up here and volunteer? Sure, come on.
Whenever people ask questions and stuff because they're not mic'd,
What was that?
whenever people ask questions and, if you're gonna have to talk, you'll have to repeat what they say so
Okay.
the other theater can hear.
Oh, great. Hi,
Hello.
Sasha.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, Sasha, why did you become a software developer?
Because the work I was doing before wasn't going anywhere.
Okay.
Dead end job.
Dead-end job.
Yes.
Okay. And you like being a software developer?
Yes.
What are your dreams going forward as a software developer?
Continuous learning, continuous improvement, doing work that I feel brings value.
Okay. Do you know your learning style?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to guess visual and a little bit of auditory, but you're even lower on the kinesthetic side, which is a little bit unusual for software developers, but what do you think?
Sure. I don't know.
You know, you just said you knew your learning style.
I'm not familiar with those. I feel like my style is practical. So if there's a real world problem, then I'm most motivated to learn.
Okay, that's your reason.
Okay.
Okay, but thank you.
Yeah.
So Sasha is also a move away person. We typically choose how we're going to do things either because we move away or we move towards. He was moving away from a job that was dead end as opposed to moving towards something else. Neither one is better than the other. It's just knowing how somebody makes decisions can help you to help them come to the right conclusion for what they need to have done. So an important thing is to ask questions and then be silent. Any parents in the room? Any parents of teenagers in the room? Teenagers ask questions and they just keep talking. They don't even wait for the answer. But the thing is that we sometimes do the same thing, only it's not as obvious because we ask the question and then we're thinking in our head about the next thing we're going to say or the next point we need to make, and we're not really listening to what they're saying to us. So there's something called neuro-linguistic programming. What that is understanding how people organize their thinking, their feelings, their language, their behaviors. So this is the communication breakdown. 55% is body language. 38% is tonality. Only 7% is words. And in today's society, we do so much communication through the internet where all we have is the words, and we miss 93% of what is actually going on with the person we're communicating with. So try to have as many of your communications in person so that you can see them. If you're far away, ask for a camera. Say, I just really want to be able to have a face-to-face conversation. We'll recognize certain body language, slumped shoulders, downcast eyes, head down, lack of animation. This can tell us a lot of things. It may be telling us that they're not interested in what we're talking about. It could also be something different. I mean, we've all heard if somebody's got their arms crossed like this, that they're not interested, they're closed off. But really, in my case, it usually means I'm cold. There's another set of body language that we usually don't even pay attention to. Eyes that smile. If a smile is genuine, the eyes crinkle up, that tells a whole lot about how the person is perceiving what we're saying. And then there's eyes that lie, which I would not even be able to pick out in this room if any of that's going on, because I can't really see you all. But so eyes that lie is if a person is really trying to hold eye contact, often they're not telling the truth in what they're saying, because we're taught from a very young age, look at me when you're talking. That's how I know you're telling the truth. Well, then they become practiced at looking, and it becomes unnatural. Exaggerated nodding is a sign that they really want acceptance. They want you to agree with what they're saying. But if a person is copying your body language, like you cross your arms and they cross theirs, or you cross a leg and they cross theirs, that's an indication that they're actually in tune with you. So that means you have really good communication at this time. So sensory acuity is when you're going beyond the obvious. And that's one of the things that we really need to become better at. You need to recognize the motivations of the people that you're communicating with. You need to find their pain. And you need to learn to communicate with someone who communicates differently than you do. So people who are visual learners often really struggle to communicate with people who are kinesthetic learners, and vice versa. Recognizing motivation. Are we proactive or reactive? Do we go towards a goal, or are we moving away from something? Do we like options, procedures? Are we ritualistic? These are all things that affect how we make decisions. It also affects how we give information. Sometimes people who are procedural, they're motivated to do things the exact same way. They always want to do the right thing. People who like options, you want to give them a choice. You want to say, well, do you want to do this, or would you like to do that? But always make sure that the choices you give are ones that you can live with. So don't give a client an option where you really want them to pick option A, and then give them option B expecting them to pick A, because they may really think that B is the good option. People who are ritualistic, they may have very strong feelings or superstitions. They may have phrases that indicate a constant outcome. So definition of pain is a little bit different in communications. It's your problems, your anxieties, irritations, negative feelings. All of these things are pain. As Fomi said in the beginning, people are the problem. That's why we have jobs. We have people who have problems that we need to solve, and that's why we need to find their pain. So as we saw with Sasha, when he came up here, there are 3 learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Each person is really a mix of all 3, but you're going to have one that you're really strong in, one that you're probably weak in, and one that's just kind of in the middle. The key is to find out the person you're communicating with, what their style is, and try and actually emulate that. So if you are a strongly kinesthetic person, try to learn to be a visual, try to learn to be an auditory. So visual people will tend to use words like foresee or ideal, or they have a mental image. They might have an illusion of something. They're looking in hindsight. They want to paint a picture. They want to make a scene. They're looking for perspective, and they're looking for what appears. They use the word look a lot. Visual learners learn by seeing, watching demonstrations. They have vivid imaginations. They think in pictures. They also tend to look upwards when they are asked a question about why they did something or something that they're trying to recollect, because they actually see that picture going above their head. So it's like they're looking up at it. They also may talk quickly because they're trying to keep up with the picture that's going on in their head. They like descriptive writing. Their handwriting is usually neat and evenly sized. So auditory learners, they want to inform you. They're big on the power of speech. They might proclaim something, state it. There could be a hidden message. They want it expressed clearly. They want to announce something. They suggest things and express things. Auditory learners, they learn from verbal instruction from others or from their self. They are probably the people that you overhear talking to themselves when they're trying to figure something out. They tend to write lightly. They think in sounds. Details are less important to them. They will talk out their problems. They usually have a moderate rate of speech, same rate as we think in words. Their eyes will move side to side when you ask them a question towards their ears. Kinesthetics. They're intuitive, they're sensitive, they like to grasp things, they tend to hurt, they find things unbearable, they respond, they'll also tell you to hang in there, they're emotional, they panic, and they feel. They learn by doing, they have a tendency to fidget. They usually have good handwriting that deteriorates with lack of space. So if you've ever seen where you've got good handwriting going across and then it goes down the side of the page, that's probably a kinesthetic. They're not attentive to visual and auditory presentations. They need something with their hands. They might be that person that tunes out in the room. They usually have a slow rate of speech. They pause. They take a feeling check before making a decision. Their eyes will look down when they're trying to recollect something, often towards the heart. So then there's something called task orientation. I find a lot of people are not familiar with task orientation, and most people are familiar with the DISC model. A task-oriented person, or could be like a driver, is going to be somebody who has a specific focus on the task. They're extroverted, they like to talk. Somebody who's expressive, they also like to talk, but they're more on the intuitive side, so they're not really looking for how oriented they are on the task. An analytic, they like to listen, but they're also task-oriented. And then an amiable, they listen and they're intuitive. There are tests out there that you can take to find out where you fit on this model. Ironically, for me, I'm like right in the dead center when I take this test. It's kind of interesting. This is called the Merrill-Reed assessment, by the way. So the driver, they want it done yesterday. Anybody in here recognize that in themselves? Nobody who wants to admit to it anyway? I think probably a lot of us fall into that analytic category. It kind of goes well with what we do. They want it done perfectly. An amiable, they want people to get along. And the expressives, they just rely on their intuition. So this is the DISC model. And this doesn't fit well on my screen, but so the DISC model is dominance, influence, steadiness, compliance. Finding out where you are on this model and then finding out where the person that you're talking with is on this model can help you a lot with your communication. And you can find out a lot without actually having them take the test. You can ask a lot of questions. In the old days in sales, they used to call this building rapport, but you would typically notice like, okay, they've got baseball in their office, so we're going to talk baseball. But the real way of building rapport is to get to know the person outside of what their hobbies are. So a person who is highly dominant, they're direct, they're decisive, they're independent, to the point. They're bottom line and results oriented. They're often strong-willed, and they enjoy challenges and immediate results. An influence person, they're optimistic, social, outgoing. They enjoy being on teams, sharing openly, entertaining and motivating others. A compliance person is really cautious and they're concerned. they're probably going to be the ones to ask a lot of questions before making any decision at all. Whereas, say, the dominant person, they tend to charge full speed ahead. Steadiness, that's your team players. They're cooperative and they are supportive of others. They prefer being in the background. So the thing about this DISC model is that a lot of companies actually will have you take this test before hiring to determine if you actually fit on their team. I would argue that if you're working in a company that does this, you want to try and encourage them to get people of all mixes, because you're going to have a stronger team if you have people that fit into all of these categories. So how do we tie all of this together? You need to become a profiler. So not like Criminal Minds or CSI where we're profiling criminals, but you need to be able to profile the people you work with, your clients, your family. All of these are places where this can help you out. The first person you want to profile is yourself. If you don't know your learning style, then how can you possibly know how to meet somebody else at their learning style? If you don't know your DISC profile or your Merrill Reed, then you can't meet another person where they are. So you need to learn to tile your style to their style. So one of the things that you can do when you just don't know, or if you're giving a presentation to an audience, is to engage them all. You can be kinesthetic. If you can have people doing things, that can be very helpful. That's actually why I usually use the index cards to get people involved in doing something physical. I'm giving an audio presentation, so you get to hear talking. You get a set of screen slides so that you can see something, so that this presentation is supposed to get to the visual learners, the auditory learners, and the kinesthetics. Once you've profiled yourself, and you've profiled your clients, and you've profiled the people in your life, you can learn to adjust how you give information. So, like my daughter who is auditory, I would never give her something visual to look at, because it's just not going to help her to give me the answers that I need from her. But she and I will have a conversation. My son who's kinesthetic, I will hand him a bunch of things to play with and say, all right, well, why don't you play with this? And then we'll actually have a communication. I'm talking to him. He's actually paying attention because his hands are busy, and he needs that. So these are some resources that I recommend. You can go to www.123test.com and you can do a free DISC profile. The Merrill Reed assessment, they have it actually on a bunch of websites, but I grabbed the vantagepoint.ca. And the Myers-Briggs personality test is at mbtionline.com. If you're interested in learning about the neuro-linguistic programming, the book 30 Days to NLP by Lorelei Blythe and Heidi Heron is a really good book. And then, do you have any questions? This one is so much faster than every other time.
So whenever you engage a client, obviously you can't say, here, take this test.
Right.
So how would you gain enough information to profile?
So like how I brought Sasha down here, that's actually one of the questions I usually ask is, why did you get into this, whatever it is that they do? And when they're answering the question, I am listening to what they say, but I'm also paying attention to their body language, how their eyes move, how they pause, their rate of speech, just a number of different little indicators that I've learned, and that'll tell me a lot. And if I even just know whether they're a kinesthetic or an auditory or a visual learner, that tells me a lot, and that can get me started. And I just work at the rest of the profile as I go. I mean, it may take me months before I get all of it, but I almost on the first day will know that one piece of information. Yes?
Could you put the link slide back up real quick?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
So what if you are different
What if you're a different person depending on the situation? I don't really worry about what I am in a situation. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. It actually sounds like you are an adaptable person and you're adapting to what's being presented to you. Some people are not able to do that, and they have like one area that just completely dominates them. A lot of times kids who struggle in school, it's because they're not a visual learner, and all of our schools are set up for visual learners up through about 9th or 10th grade. So you can have like really smart kids who don't do well because they can't adapt. I would say for you, you're just an adaptable person, and it's not so much that you favor one or the other, or that you change based on what the task is. I think that you just adapt based on what's presented to you. Yes? Oh, I thought she had a question back there. Anybody else? Any questions from the other rooms?
Yeah, this one's from Slack. How does this connect? How do you connect this to how you build what the business needs? And are there techniques that you use in those meetings?
So when I'm meeting with a client, the way that it connects is that usually the disconnect that we have is that they're not really telling us what they need. When people have a pain, our natural instinct is to hide it. And so if I can get to their pain and figure out what their problem is, what's making them anxious, what are those negative emotions, then I'm able to actually help them to tell me what it is that they really need me to do. Usually the problem with us building what they want is because they haven't told us. And sometimes it's that they don't recognize it themselves because they're not really even admitting to themselves what their true problem is. So that's the key, is getting them to admit what the problem is, and once they've admitted that, they'll actually tell us what it is they need us to do. Any other questions?
Okay, so follow up actually from the person.
Okay.
So finding these pain points, so you would be finding these pain points using the communication knowledge that you're sharing.
Right. If I can recognize in a person what their learning style is, how they approach problems, then I can actually present to them in a way and ask questions in a way that they're going to be receptive to. And I'll even change my wording. If a person is visual, those words that I listed as a visual learner's keywords, I am going to use a lot more of those words. I'm going to do it on purpose. If they're an auditory person, I'm going to change how I ask a question based on them being an auditory person. That's it? Okay, then enjoy the movie.